For over a century, Sherlock Holmes has been one of the most celebrated icons of not only mystery fiction, but all of literature, and his popularity and influence has expanded beyond the English-speaking world. Debuting in 1887, the adventures of the Great Detective Sherlock Holmes, along with his companion Dr. John Watson, have been adapted to other media from as early as 1890, and so far have been adapted more than 4,000 times. In fact, no other fictional character has been adapted to other media more often than Sherlock Holmes. As the world's iconic detective, Holmes has been a popular figure in cartoons and animation, appearing in animated adaptations produced around the world in various different languages, showcasing the detective in different guises and in different time periods, while being voiced by a wide variety of talented voice actors. Today we're going in search of the very first time Sherlock Holmes appeared on our screens in animated form, and track the Great Detective's appearances in character in cartoons and animation throughout the 20th century. Sherlock Holmes made his animated debut on the 10th of June 1933 in a Merry Melodies short entitled I Like Mountain Music, which itself was a follow-up to the 1932 short Three's a Crowd, in which literary characters come to life and step out of their book covers. This time we're in a drugstore, after hours, and characters from magazines in a magazine rack come to life. Cowboys in a Western magazine sing and play I Like Mountain Music, while the characters from all the other magazines join in the fun. Crooks from a crime magazine attempt to rob the till, but are thwarted by Sherlock Holmes, King Kong, and other magazine characters. Holmes plays a more prominent role in the cartoon compared to the other characters, who include many celebrity cameos such as Edward G. Robinson and Will Rogers. Sherlock Holmes next appeared briefly in 1938 in another Merry Melodies short called Year in Education, another Everything Comes to Life at Midnight cartoon. This time it's brochures in a travel agency that are coming to life. The thief of Baghdad uses the Florida Keys to break into the Kimberley diamond mine, and, as the primary police authority, Sherlock Holmes is charged with chasing the villain down. The detective made a famous cameo appearance in the legendary Looney Tunes cartoon, The Great Piggy Bank Robbery, released in 1946, directed by Bob Clampett and starring Daffy Duck. Daffy falls asleep and dreams that he is a parody of Dick Tracy, on a case in search of stolen piggy banks. While searching the streets, Daffy bumps into Sherlock Holmes and aggressively tells Holmes that he, Daffy, is working that side of the street. The wealthy, cantankerous, short and nearly blind Mr. Magoo played Sherlock Holmes' assistant, Dr. Watson, in the 25th episode of the famous adventures of Mr. Magoo, entitled Mr. Magoo's Sherlock Holmes, released in 1965. Voiced by legendary voice actor Paul Frees, Holmes and his silly sidekick assist a troubled young woman who is being stalked by shadowy figures after coming into possession of a large gold nugget, in a fun and clever cartoon that references a number of original Sherlock Holmes stories and also included some original dialogue and phrases from the canon. Burbank Films was an Australian animation studio which adapted a variety of classic tales into animated children's films, releasing more than 70 films over a 20-year period. The 4 original Sherlock Holmes novels were adapted into animated features by the studio, all released in 1983. Peter O'Toole voiced Sherlock Holmes in all 4 adaptations, which were low-budget and no-frills productions, but still faithful renditions which stayed fairly true to the original material. This next entry didn't feature Holmes in character and was only loosely based on the original stories, but was still a fun and interesting take on the character. Sherlock Hound was an Italian-Japanese anime television series produced by Rai and Tokyo Movie Shinsha, which ran for 26 episodes and aired between 1984 and 1985. What made the show interesting was that almost all the characters are depicted as anthropomorphic dogs, while the show also regularly implemented Jules Verne-inspired steampunk-style technology, adding a 19th century science fiction atmosphere to the series. Speaking of anthropomorphic renditions, The Great Mouse Detective was a 1986 Disney animated mystery adventure film which drew heavily on the tradition of Sherlock Holmes and where the main characters are all mice and rats living in Victorian London. Based on the children's book series Basil of Baker Street by Eve Titus, the film tells the story of Basil, the famous Great Mouse Detective, who lives beneath the home of Sherlock Holmes. Basil investigates the kidnapping of a toy maker and uncovers its link to his arch-enemy, Professor Rattigan. In her book series, Titus named the Basil character after Basil Rathbone, South African-born English actor who portrayed Holmes in 14 Hollywood films made between 1939 and 1946, and archival audio of Rathbone can be heard in one scene voicing the actual Sherlock Holmes. The film was a commercial and box office success, not only saving Disney's animation studios from bankruptcy at the time, but also setting the stage for the Disney Renaissance that followed. From 1979 to 1986, Russian production company Lenfilm produced 5 films, split into 11 episodes, for Soviet television, starring Vasily Livanov as Sherlock Holmes and Vitaly Solomon as Dr. Watson. The series was extremely popular, earning Livanov an honorary MBE for service to the theatre and performing arts in 2006, and in 2007, a statue of Livanov and Solomon as Holmes and Watson was installed at the United Kingdom Embassy in Moscow. But in 1985, between the 4th and the 5th films, an animated short was produced about Sherlock Holmes that was 9 minutes in length, called Sherlock Holmes and I. It features a dog named Tom reminiscing to his pups about his adventures with Sherlock Holmes and a very unlikely pair of burglars. And of course, Livanov provided his voice for Sherlock Holmes. In 1988, Sherlock Holmes took a trip to the future in the 2-part Brave Star episode Sherlock Holmes in the 23rd Century. While battling Moriarty, Sherlock Holmes falls down Reichenbach Falls and into a time warp which transports him into the year 2249. There he is healed back to health by the Reigelian Dr. Watson and introduced to his great-great-grandniece, aged Mycroft Holmes of Scotland Yard. Sherlock Holmes sets up shop in his old residence, which by this point has been turned into a Sherlock Holmes museum, and he, Reigelian Dr. Watson, and Mycroft are soon approached by Marshal Bravestar, who needs their help in searching for a missing alien boy called Fleeder. The 2-part episode was originally intended to be a pilot episode for a new Filmation series called Sherlock Holmes in the 23rd Century and intended to premiere in the fall of 1989. However, in the same year, Filmation was sold to a consortium led by the French cosmetics company L'Oréal. L'Oréal was only interested in the Filmation library and shut down all of the studio's production, and the planned series never came to fruition. Incidentally, voice actor Pat Fraley voiced both Bravestar and Sherlock Holmes. In 1989, the Ghostbusters, well, the real Ghostbusters, encountered the spirit of Sherlock Holmes in the real Ghostbusters episode Elementary, My Dear Winston. The ghosts of the legendary Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson arrive in modern-day New York to find Professor Moriarty. When Watson gets captured, Sherlock Holmes selects Winston to help him, while Moriarty seeks to absorb all the ghosts in the containment unit to strengthen his powers and turn himself from spirit to flesh. Sherlock Holmes was next spotted in 1990, appearing in an episode of Garfield and Friends entitled Hound of the Arbuckles. Garfield falls asleep while reading The Hound of the Baskervilles and dreams that he is back in 19th century London playing the role of Watson as he assists Sherlock Holmes in looking for a missing Odie. It was fun watching Garfield assisting the Great Detective in his search, and the episode was unusual in that both Garfield and John spoke in English accents during the dream sequence. Elementary, My Dear Turtle was the 14th episode of the 4th season of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, released in 1993. In this episode, the Turtles find themselves in England, where they are transported back to the past by an experimental atomic clock, and must team up with Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson in order to get the clock back from Moriarty and return to the present. Sherlock Holmes next appeared 2 years later in 1995 in an Animaniacs episode called Deduces Wild. In the third episode of the third season, the Warners are trying to complete a scavenger hunt and pester Sherlock Holmes at his flat for his help in completing the scavenger hunt, which includes some bizarre items to find. Holmes ended the century with his very own animated series called Sherlock Holmes in the 22nd Century, developed jointly by Deke Entertainment and Scottish Television Enterprises. The iconic detective finds himself transported to the 22nd century, where the world is free of crime until Holmes's greatest adversary, Professor James Moriarty, is accidentally cloned by a scientist and intends to reinstate criminality. Holmes is brought back to stop the villain, while the personality of Dr. Watson is programmed into an android to assist him. Joining the duo is Beth Lestrade, descendant of Inspector G. Lestrade, Holmes's old ally from Scotland Yard. Each episode is inspired by one of Arthur Conan Doyle's classic stories, many of them direct rewrites of the original stories, and the show was nominated for a Daytime Emmy for Special Class Animated Program. Visually, Sherlock Holmes in the 22nd century was a blend of traditional 2D and 3D CGI animation, and remains the only animated series with Sherlock Holmes as the main character. Sherlock Holmes has left an everlasting mark on popular culture through his many appearances in different kinds of media over the past century, particularly in animation. The Great Detective would of course continue to appear in more animated adaptations in the next century, but that's a video for another time. As the world's iconic detective, Sherlock Holmes has inspired and influenced countless creators and will no doubt continue to do so for many years to come. I hope you enjoyed watching this video as much as I did researching it. Please subscribe for more regular content like this one and hit the bell notification so you never miss an upload. Thank you for watching and stay tuned for more cartoon history.